So the first principle around creating a safe environment is this principle of voicing. And voicing with integrity and honesty from the heart. And voicing isn't always about speaking. It's sometimes what isn't said is really powerful as much as what is said. And in Unilever, it's always about saying the right thing, and voicing is not necessarily always about saying the right thing. And so the first thing that happens in voicing is self-censorship. So we hold back from what we should say or shouldn't say, right? And we often say this in Unilever, it's a very clever thing to say, we'll take this conversation offline, eh? And often lots of offline conversations happen for two reasons. One, I don't want to seem to be emotional about this, so I'm going to disengage from this. Or I don't want to seem like I'm taking us off the path in terms of where we're going. And so lots of places we censor ourselves and we don't really engage in the topic. And I think when we were first engaging in this, we were doing some work in Nigeria, we spoke to a guy and he said, so around inclusivity, around women and gender, in the boardroom, I'll agree with it 100%. But you may not share what I'm about to share with you. And he said that when he gets home at night, his wife has to cook him a cooked meal. He doesn't care. She can be the biggest CEO in the world and the president of whatever. But when he gets home, it's not a Woolies meal. It's a meal cooked by his wife. And he believes that. But he said, I'll never share that at Unilever. And so even though he says yes to this inclusivity drive, he really doesn't believe it. And so when we self-censor, we might say the right things, but often say we leak what we don't not saying. And so whatever you're not saying, you're going to begin to leak it. And so rather than leak it, rather say it. And so over the next 2 days, let's practice not self-censoring in terms of how we're feeling. The other one is around we live in a particular box. And so we come into the room and we say, okay, I need to fit into this box. Primarily introverts, extroverts, right? So extroverts, we just vomit the first thing that comes to our head and we just throw it out there on the table, and we tend to hog a lot of space, not creating space for people that want to put their ideas on the table. And so often what I say for extroverts is, it can be literal speech or it can be figurative speech, saying, hey?
Put a sweet in your mouth.
No, a stone, it can be anything, but your sweets are your currency. And so in an hour you have 3 turns to speak or 5 turns to speak, which means then I'm not going to jump in because I got only 5 turns, right? And so it just makes me conscious a little bit more about how much space, how much real estate am I taking over in terms of what's been shared around you. Then introverts, they normally are looking for the opportunity. So you've got an idea and now you want to share it, but you're looking for the right time to put your idea onto the table. And these extroverts are just not creating the space for you to do that. And so eventually an introvert says, I'm done with you. Go hang yourself for all I care. Go down this path. I'm not putting my ideas on the table any longer. And people disengage from the conversation because they haven't been created that space. And so we often walk in those boxes that we live in. And so introverts, your challenge is to spend your currency within the hour. So you've got 3 stones at the end of the session. You need to put your 3 stones on the table so that it creates a space like that. And so I think what us extroverts hate the most is this. See, you can't even go for 3 seconds, right? That's silence. And so over the next 2 days, there will be silence. And we're okay with it. We're not anxious about the silence. And I often say some of my best conversations with my wife is when we sit quietly and have a cup of tea and say nothing to each other. Because it's really rich. And the silence can speak to you. And let's see how we engage around that. And often don't speak from what we call speak from memory, where you have a particular way of speaking or answering something, and so we always go back to what was memorized. Well, often you'll notice people, we're busy in a discussion, then you write down what you want to say because you don't want to forget because they're really powerful. And what we're doing is we're actually disengaging from that conversation because we really have a point that we think is so important. And for the next 2 days, have the courage to let that thought go. And if it was important, it'll come back. And just be in the real moment and put new ideas onto the table. If you're feeling something, go with it and see how it goes. So we have 4 hooks around voicing. The first one is courage. You can't teach somebody to be courageous. You catch it. It's like a flu. It's like a cold. It's like a virus. And so in this room, can we be courageous? If one person has courage, other people begin to have that same kind of courage. And so let's have the virus of courage over the next 2 days. The other one is sincerity. You written a letter and ended it sincerely yours? Resignation letters normally end sincerely yours. Loved working here, it was great, I learned so much, it's not you, it's me, I need to move on in my life, sincerely yours, Sue. Right? Ever think about where the word sincere comes from? Back in the day, in Europe, if you wanted to show off your wealth, you wouldn't buy a Maserati or a Mercedes-Benz or whatever else. You would have a statue made of yourself and you put it outside your house, and that would determine that you're a really wealthy person. And so you would have an artist sculpt your face out of marble, and then you would put it on a body and put it outside your house. And sometimes an artist would make a mistake and chop off the nose or put a crack in the head. And it would be really expensive to do the job again, plus the piece of marble is really expensive. So instead of doing that all again, you'd take some wax and fill it in, shape the nose and then polish it up, and you wouldn't notice the difference. But it would be fine in winter, right? But in summer, outside, the sun would bake on it, the nose would fall off, the crack would appear, and you'd realize you've been sold a dud. And so what you would do is you would insist that people would put a stamp on the statue that said there's no wax on the statue, and the Latin word for no wax is sincero, which means no wax. So next time you write that letter, sincerely yours, what you're saying is, in this letter there's no wax, there's no polishing up, it is truthfully what it is. There's integrity in this letter. So over the next 2 days, don't try and wax your conversation. Don't try and be smart, like, that A-type personality. I've been hired, that's why I'm here, and so let me say the right things, and if it's not going to come out right, let me not say it, because let's have sincerity in how we engage over the next 2 days. The other hook that we want to talk about is congruency. What you say here, is it lived out other places? And probably around inclusivity, this is the biggest challenge. For the most part, most inclusivity workshops, where your most diverse place is that you ever engage with is at work. And so most people come to Unilever and say, wow, what an incredible place I work, it's so diverse. And then when you clock out at night, you go back to your little bubble that looks like you, thinks like you, breathes like you, does air, and you go back to that little homogeneous bubble. And people don't understand why inclusivity or diversity doesn't stick. It's because there's no congruency in it. You're not stepping towards others in your personal life. And so it looks fake when you try and fake it or do it at work. So you might have integrity about trying to do it at work, but you're not doing it in your personal life. And so the real challenge for all of us here is, how am I stepping towards the other in my personal life? Where, if somebody had to ask me at Unilever, can I point to it outside of Unilever? Or am I going to be embarrassed by what's outside of Unilever? So that is the biggest challenge I think we have, this congruency that we have. And the final one that we want to talk about is the importance of storytelling. So over the 2 days, you'll forget these 7 points that myself and Seth are going to share over the next hour. You're going to forget everything else, but the one thing you won't forget are the stories of the people sitting at your table and the stories we share. And so if you want to have an impactful 2 days, it's about the short stories we share with each other.